Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Own Heroes podcast. I'm Bex Campbell.
And I'm Tomas Evangelista.
And I'm Neva Parker. And today we might be a little bit, there's a lot going on in the world, right? Like there's a lot. And so we might not be, we probably will not be following our more lighthearted fare that we've been doing lately. And we're going to try to take it down and acknowledge what's been going on. To catch folks up, there has been large-scale ICE raids in LA. And for some inexplicable reason other than just pure power, the president decided that he wanted to take control of the National Guard and send in troops. Now, the National Guard is commanded by both the federal government and the governor of that state. So he's usurping the governor's power and sending in troops onto California soil. On top of that, the Trump administration also threatened to send the Marines to California if it wasn't handled properly by the National Guard. So that's where we're at right now. Additionally, there's been a few other things happening. Raids on graduations, raids on workplaces, and folks are pretty upset and they're worried and they're angry. And we wanted to address that for this particular podcast. And so Tomas, who has a lot of experience and is a leader in our community when it comes to immigration, has agreed to talk about his experience and give us some insight that we all might not have. So I'm going to turn it over to Tomas, I think, and just ask him, let's start this off. Let us know how it is, like your feelings now, your experience, your background, and
Definitely.
we'll interrupt and ask questions. How about that?
Yes. And thank you for that short update on what's going on. I just felt like one of the things that many people have on this topic, one of the issues they have is that they feel like they don't know anybody that's undocumented. They think that that's just somebody in a different community, different state, Southern California. But the reality is that many of us are embedded in our communities, especially here in Placer County. And I offer up my story, my situation. I'm very public about it. I feel like it helps give some, humanizes the topic just because we're hearing so much from federal government, Trump himself, and other people that just have a very negative view and that are using this topic, our people, to push a certain agenda, and it's difficult. So I understand when there are people that look at us differently, because sometimes that's the only information that they're getting. So I hope that this does make it to people that are curious, that maybe have heard a lot of the negativity, but really think that they don't know anybody that's undocumented. I share my story for that reason. So.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah. What do you want to know?
Paint a picture. What age were you when you came to this country?
Yeah, thanks. It's a good question. I always like to start out to before I came to this country, because it does give a reason. I don't want to say an excuse, but there was a driving force to that, and it was poverty for my family specifically. We're from a very poor town in Mexico, specifically Guerrero, Mexico. If you've ever been to Acapulco, if you vacation there, that's the same state that I'm from. I'm just 5 hours inland on the border of Michoacan. But I'm in the Guerrero side, a small town called Morelita. Next door is Tringueo, they're two very small towns. Most of my family is from there. But in early 90s, I was born in 1990. It was very poor town still. My grandfather did come to the United States and worked in the 70s. He picked picked grapes, peaches, other things that were needed in the Central Valley, and went as far as Texas for work in the 70s. My grandmother would tell me, oh, yeah, he would just show up with like a bunch of fruit, like boxes of fruit that he carried from United States to Mexico, like on a bus. So he would go in and out and have these periods of time where he would go to the United States and work. But things started getting very difficult. He started falling into substance abuse, and at some point, just things were disconnected. And he stayed in the United States for longer than what we thought he was, and we really struggled there. My grandmother was already having 5 children, all some of them teens. My mother was the oldest. But we were all struggling, and by that time, my brother had already been born. Myself, I had already been born, and we were just very struggling. And my father, who at that time had already came to the United States, he also abandoned us. So 2 of the men in their family abandoned our family back in Mexico. So my mother had a very difficult decision to make. Her being the oldest, she felt like it was right for her to come to the United States and send us money because we were really struggling in our home country. My grandmother, already witnessing 2 of our family members leave us, did not want that, of course. She was also in fear of like, what you're a woman, what if something happens along the way? What if you abandon us? But my mother promised my grandmother that she would not do that. And so my grandmother sold whatever she needed to sell to help pay her way to the United States. And my mother arrived in 1991. She left about, I'm told, when I was 1 year old. And within a few weeks, she was able to send us money, and we were able to at least survive in our town. And of course, her babies were back home. So what do you do then? You work very hard for the next year, save up money so that they're able to come to the United States and meet up with you.
So your mom went by herself?
Yes, she met up with she did find my grandfather in LA and other people from our hometown, but originally she came by herself.
Wow.
And LA was actually the area that people would arrive. And they, of course, we're not we're not city people. We're from a very rural town. So as you know now, like we're in Auburn in Northern California for that reason. We just couldn't. We weren't comfortable, as I'm told, in LA and in bigger cities. But my mother worked hard for a year, and within that year, she was able to send for us. I was almost 3. I think I was probably 2.5. I had just learned how to walk.
Aw.
So I was a late bloomer. I was told that I was 2 on my 2nd birthday, and I still couldn't walk. So
wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. There's a big spread.
Yeah, there is. It's just, I even to these days, I don't see kids that don't know how to walk by the age of 2. But I mean,
Well, here you are. You walk now.
Walk by.
But once I was able to walk, my mother sent us. So she sent for us, and my uncle, who at that time was the youngest, 2nd youngest, was 15. I mean, he and my grandmother were very worried. Wait, we're gonna send 2 children with strangers from where we are at, which is like a day bus ride to the border. That can't happen. So my uncle, who was 15 at the time, was like, you know what? I'll go with them. And so you have 2 kids with a 15-year-old trek.
Well, so essentially 3 kids.
Yes, I didn't think of that. 3 kids.
Well, yeah, because how old was your brother?
He was a few years older than me, so he was like probably 4 or 5.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so tiny.
And there's pictures of us before we left. And my uncle was 15. I I remember I have memories of being on a bus. I threw up on a bus because I was not used to. I got, I guess, motion sickness,
Sure.
and the fear of the toilet that I talked about. That is where that came from, or that where that started. And he got us to the border, and from then I don't really know how. What I'm told is that my uncle, we met up with somebody, and we we went through the border. Not, uh, I think it with some other people. In Spanish, they call it "pasamos por la línea," which stands for like we went through the line, which means like we went through a checkpoint. And I think we might have just used someone else's documents, another child's documents, to come to the United States. Which, by the way, is, I think, the safest way, because there's also other dangerous ways that people were coming to the United States, long treks through deserts, many people dying just to try to get to this country. My uncle did that kind of route. He wasn't with us, and then we met up later, and then we ended up all safely with my mom in Santa Barbara at that.
Wow.
So
So
I
you
came here.
split up with your uncle.
Yes, that's what I'm told. I mean, I was like
Oh,
2 or
okay.
3. And we don't have much information on how we crossed. This is just what we think, because my mother passed away when I was 5, and she was the one that had that arrangement. So we can only theorize this is what happened. My uncle told us he left us with some people. They safely got us across, and then after that, that's all he knows. So.
Hmm.
And I had to disclose this, by the way, in some when I applied for a green card. How
Okay.
did you come here? And I was like, I don't know. This is what I think happened. And so it's something that's documented, at least, on how that happened.
So you get to California, you get to Santa Barbara,
Mm.
you're there for a little bit.
I start preschool there. I
Oh,
was
you did.
one of the first in my family to do preschool.
Oh,
Um, and I I learned how to speak English and Spanish at the same time.
oh
Um,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I still didn't speak much when I was here. Um, and also I hadn't seen my mother in like over a year or
Yeah.
a year. So that also had to be an adjustment as well. Being with different people, also was, I had a stepdad at that point, and my sister, half sister, was also born around that time as well. So it was good up until my mother was diagnosed with cancer around the age of 5.
Yeah.
And she had another difficult decision to make because her health declined. She had been to many doctors here, and there was no cure, there was no solution to it. She refused to believe that. So one of the choices was to go to Mexico for care. I don't know why she made that decision. I don't know if it was because maybe she couldn't afford it here, if there was something. Um, and she thought that going to Mexico might be more affordable. Maybe she heard that there was something that could possibly work. So she did. She had to leave us again. She At this time she left us with my grandparents, who were already in the United States and back together. So we forgave my grandfather. He's good now. um, but they were together in Los Angeles. So my mom then left us in Los Angeles with my grandparents.
Okay. So I guess I need to look something up because I'm kind of curious, like healthcare in Mexico in the 90s versus healthcare here in the United States.
Yeah, I'm curious as
Like
well.
access, yeah. Just
What the
like
cost-
that would be a choice. Like you would go down to Mexico because you might have like a better chance at getting what you needed, which I find interesting.
And we don't know much about how she was diagnosed here. She actually kept that a little hidden from the family.
Okay.
I think my stepdad knew a little bit, but she just, in the beginning, just didn't believe what was happening, and so we didn't find out up until she was already in bad shape. Some of the pictures that I post about all of us was on my sister's baptism,
Yeah.
which is actually a few days before my mom left. So you could see she was already losing weight. She was already a little bit more pale. Um, and so her health was already declining. And many people are wondering, like, why would you leave your children again? But my mom feared for our life because the journey back. I mean, now it's a few years later. It's costly. It's dangerous. Maybe we weren't as lucky as last time, and she just wanted us also not our last images of her being on her deathbed and in really bad shape. So that was also what factored into that. My grandmother told me that she just did want us to see her in that type of shape. She wanted us our memories to be good. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Honestly, I get that. I bet a lot of moms feel that way. And they don't
By
want
the
to
time,
disrupt their kids' lives, because I'm sure, she understood that like to uproot you guys and move you again, or even if it's only for a short while, it's hard on kids.
it is
when you were 5, then would have been 1995. So by
yeah,
that point, we would have had Prop 187.
correct.
Yeah, we would have, I don't know if it would have been in effect yet. I don't know how that works, but if that had any impact on her decision, I'm wondering.
We were only with my grandparents for a few months uh, because once my mom was in Mexico and she went to a doctor there, they had told her that the cancer was now terminal. So my grandparents then instead they went back to Mexico and to be with her.
Okay.
And so what ended up happening to us is my aunt and uncle were already in Auburn at that time. And they drove down to Los Angeles and we went with them. And that's where by that time, I think I was 6 or almost 6 when I arrived in Auburn. And people to this day from the school system will tell us, like, I remember when you arrived. Like, they
Really?
told us that your mom had cancer and that's why you had come here. Like, people, it's not just it wasn't just a dream. Like, people remember those things because we were one of the first kids that were undocumented in the community, first families that didn't speak English that well. So some of the school staff remember us from those moments that we had started going to school. And somehow my aunt and uncle were able to tell them like our situation because they were my parents, you know. So that was another thing too. But at the same time, like people remember that. I still talk to some school staff that will tell me like, yeah, I do remember you and your brother when they first came to Auburn.
I think it's really cool to highlight how much your family like rallied around your family, like how much like everybody kind of stepped up, stepped in, like was like, oh well, we can help out, and now we can help out, and we'll take on this role of caregiving. Not every family does that, and I think that speaks to the level of commitment to family that I think is important to recognize, right? Like that people are trying to help one another out in all of this. I just think it's an important thing to acknowledge.
I agree.
Definitely. Um, and I also like to acknowledge the Auburn community from the beginning. Like, it's always been welcoming, it's always been helpful. And so that's why I always mention that. And that's why I want to move back to Auburn. So
So if
that's
anybody has a house for sale, Tomas is looking for one.
exactly. Yeah.
Class, wants you back. I live in Auburn, so don't know.
I do not. I would like to, but
Yeah.
I love Roseville.
After that, after my mother passed away, my grandparents came back in the United States because one of her last wishes was for my brother and I to be raised by my grandparents and her family. My stepdad, great guy, has always been there in my life, but she really felt like that would be a burden to be a father with 3 kids, 2 of them which aren't biologically yours and legally aren't yours because they're not. They never married. They were about to marry as well. So,
Oh, wow.
so my sister stayed with my stepdad and his family, and we were raised by my grandparents. So
Do you ever have any contact with them?
yeah, definitely.
Oh,
I try
cool.
to go down every year.
Oh, I
Um,
love hearing that. That's
what was that?
great. I said I
Yeah,
love hearing that. Okay,
I don't think
cool.
I knew that.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Oh, that's great.
He helped me through college financially. He's always supported me. We have conversations. My sister too. We stay in touch. So
Cool. Oh, I love that. Okay. So I'm kind of curious. I'm not really 100% certain how to ask the question, which is normal for me, but uh um so maybe I'll just come out and say it. Like, so what sort of work did your mom do? Like,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
uh,
I'm just curious because so when folks come, like, I mean, you've told us a bunch of stuff over the years and
mhm,
little pieces here that put pieces together for both Bex and I and how all of this works. And we all have our ideas of like, oh, immigrants here would do this and blah blah blah. But it would be, I mean, I to learn like the realities of just normal day-to-day life for folks is I think really important. And so when I ask this question, I'm asking, I guess, also in relation to what's happening now and these folks getting their workplace rated and those sorts of things. People are just going to work every single day trying to raise money, earn money for their families, and they just want to live. So I'm just curious what your mom did,
yeah.
um and how that all,
So one of the common places that people would work would be in some factories back in LA. I'm not sure exactly what specifically, um, but in Santa Barbara, I do know that she would she would. This is where her and my stepdad actually met. Was in a workplace uh, cutting up fish. I don't know. It's not a butcher, but there's a certain name for that.
there is a name for it. I can't remember what
Yeah,
it is. Okay. Anyway.
but
Hold on. It's not
what
a
was
fish hatchery or fishmonger. It's, oh
something
boy.
like that. But
Something, okay, got you. Okay, so processing fish. Okay, cool.
processing fish, there's a big market for that in Santa Barbara. My
Sure.
my my stepdad still does that to this day. And she also would sell tamales, make food, sell it at night, and do that type of work. I'm told she would come from one job, cook some food,
Mhm.
and then go back out to make some more money. So
Mhm.
that's what I understand that she did. But
Okay.
many people in these areas will do a lot of restaurant work, a lot of cooking. But factories, I'm not sure how relevant that is today. But I think back in the day, I've heard people that that's where they started, and I'm unsure what specific jobs, but that's how they explain it. Like, oh, trabajamos en una factoría, and they would tell me that.
I think
Well,
that some of the raids that happened in LA were in the fashion district in warehouses where people are sewing garments and that sort of thing. So I think that's still relatively common.
And actually, from my hometown, one of the things that we did over there for money is we would hand make some sombreros. We would be, I don't want to call it knitting, but like we would needle pieces of fabric together to make this very authentic sombrero, which is still a way that people make their living today. It takes 6 months to make this very nice handmade sombrero, and it
Wow.
costs at least $1,000, a few
are
thousand
these
dollars.
is this the hats that you were talking
Yeah.
about at oh my God, they are awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
They at Jennifer's dad's
Yeah, they
work
were
is
wearing
I mean,
that actually.
yeah,
They were wearing that.
Okay.
yeah.
And
They're
Oh,
it's
I'm sorry I
cool.
didn't get to see them. They sound
Yeah.
really cool.
a
Yeah.
style that comes from the region that we're from, and it's still very popular to this day. And so there are some people that still make that. So now that we mentioned that, I think the type of factories were sewing factories back then as well. So since we were comfortable, that's something that we did back home. I think that's where my mother and maybe others worked at that time.
Because I feel like when we were driving down to LA last week for the convention, I feel like that was something you had mentioned. So you mentioned it about, the coming and working in factories, but if you're coming from a rural area, like a farming area, like where your family came from, it's not an easy adjustment, like at
No.
all.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's so
Yeah.
different.
hmm
Rural life to city life.
And it's not like us coming from, like Roseville to the city. I mean, it's an
Suburbia, yeah.
entirely different,
City. Yeah, that's
you know.
different.
And I've asked some family members, hey, why did we choose Auburn?
Mhm.
And they told me, like, well, look at where we're from. If you
Yeah.
look at the region, it's there's a flat land and then there's a mountain area. It's actually mimics or similar to from where our town is from. It's
Well, you
much
said it
hotter
was
over there.
hot. Oh,
It
it's
was
much hotter. Okay.
much hotter over there. It's like 80, 90 year round. Summers are like 100, 110. The region is called Tierra Caliente, which stands for
Oh,
hot earth.
yes.
And yeah, it's just it's the, that's the type of climate that is down there.
Yeah.
Aside from that, everything is very similar. So,
Got it.
and
Yeah, nice to have that familiarity, right?
right, but I've asked before
Oh,
who
sorry.
were the first people here and why did then we just start coming here?
So
Because I'm curious of that flow, where
sure. So when they come to Auburn, where do they work? I know where
yeah,
some of your
I know
family members
where
work now, but I mean, just like then
Restaurant.
when they came to
I,
Auburn,
I think
restaurants,
I've, yeah.
restaurant. Okay.
restaurants. The men in my family I've heard are much better cooks than the women. So like, for I don't know why they'll tell themselves, they are just really good cooks.
All
Uh,
right.
and so one of the areas was restaurants that they would work on. But of course, there's also a lot of landscaping, yard work, construction work now that many do. But still, restaurants and a lot of the hospitality industries are many areas where some Latinos and immigrants work.
So what's
And,
the feeling like?
yeah, go ahead.
What's the feeling with like everything that's happening now, like
Well,
within your family and
yeah, people are definitely fearful for some of the younger immigrants, like around my age and younger, that are in their 20s, that haven't seen this, experience this. It's definitely something that's super scary, and that they don't know how things are going to turn out. I mean, people, they go to work, they don't know if they're going to return, if their family member are going to return. It's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's the toughest part. We're seeing on social media what's going on in Los Angeles. Um, People share things thinking this announcement was for our area when really they're talking about Southern California and what's happening there. But there also have been ICE in Auburn, ICE in Lincoln, Roseville,
yep.
and Rockland, people being picked up silently in targeted ways and other ways as well that we're unsure. But that's happening. It's been happening since January. I today or no yesterday I spoke to a friend of mine. Her boyfriend in Rockland was picked up by ICE about a month ago, and he was just recently deported. And he saw a lot of things in Bakersfield where he was being held. First, he had a legal, uh, not pathway, but he had a legal argument to be in this country. He had some form of relief, but they just ignored that. As a, they
Really?
ignored that and they deported him immediately within a day, and now he's in Mexico. But also, from what he witnessed, is that there are people in these detentions that are also legal immigrants or undocumented immigrants, and also citizens that are mixed in these detentions, and they just don't care. I think that the reason they deport you so quickly is because once you're in Mexico, you can't do anything. You can't file anything. You can't argue anything. You're already out of the country. And that the quicker they can get you out, the less that they would have to deal with the less you could file for human rights, and all of that. And it's really heartbreaking. They're just not following any of the normal procedures and laws that are supposed to be filed. So that is still going on, despite these raids in some of these big cities like Los Angeles.
I don't got words.
I mean, honestly, I'm just trying to keep my blood pressure down. If I'm being real, you guys, I honestly, it pisses me off. It really pisses me off. Like, I don't, it's really hard to find words that are measured and not,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's really difficult. I feel very frustrated. I feel, I don't know. I don't have good words right now. I'm trying to keep my blood pressure in check because, I mean, I'm just really pissed off.
And if I smile during this conversation, it's just kind of the way that I
Yeah.
try to regulate myself. It's through comedy or some form of this, even though this topic and what I'm saying shouldn't be taken lightly. So,
I think I'll speak for myself. You know, I haven't known you. I've now known you for what, like a year. I mean, you know, we've known each other for a while, but like,
right.
you know, I've known you for a year now. And I have very limited experience with immigration, very limited experience. And so I have learned a lot knowing you. And you've been very open in sharing your story and all the experiences and my wild questions. And so I'm grateful for that. Um, but much like the younger folks, this is as much as I've lived as much as I've lived through like a lot of things now as I'm approaching my age, I just don't have any personal experience with this particular thing. So I do feel like I'm one of those 20 and 24-year-olds having, you know, experiencing this for the first time and just realizing the magnitude of how careless and how uncaring and how dispassionate and how um like cruel this whole entire thing is. And and I can't imagine it. Well, I can't imagine this. Let me backtrack. I am I imagine there has been many people who want to work very hard on getting it solved. But there are also many people who want to use it and have used it now very
Mm-hmm.
successfully the last couple of years to uh, divide the country, to dehumanize people, and to snatch power in places they have no, or from places they have no business snatching power from. And so I don't know. This is I really hope that people will take the time to learn like the realities of the situation, like the fact that it will cost you what your DACA repayment every month. Like when you had to renew your DACA, wasn't it like $700 or something like that every
Yeah,
like
it's around
for like
600.
yeah, $600 for like a college kid to renew their DACA like seems, I mean, wow, that's a lot of money, you
And
know?
that's only if you do it on your own. I mean, there are
Yeah,
people that would prefer an attorney to fill out their documents, and that would cost you an additional 1,500, depending. That's probably the average price
yeah,
after for every renewal. But I do want to clarify something because I
sure.
think I don't want to misrepresent what I not misrepresent, but give a different idea of what I say when we're used to this.
Okay.
The extreme and cruelty of how they're doing this is much more severe than before.
Uh-huh.
Although there have been deportations in the past and raids in the past, in my opinion, I think the cruelty is different right
Yeah.
now. But again, also that others have experienced probably different than what I have seen, that I have experienced. I think for some of us that are older, we have experienced this, so it's not a new feeling.
Uh-huh.
But for younger people and people that like you that have never at least seen or experienced some of this at the level that we are with social media and news now. We're seeing we're almost there. Like
Mhm.
with the cameras, with people having all this video, we're almost there. Instead of just some news reporter coming on and saying this happened today, there was an ICE raid, and not
Yeah.
giving that description or that level of footage that we're seeing now. So I think that's also coming from that as well. But I think
Yeah.
the experience of being a targeted community, I think, isn't new for me and for others that have been here a little bit longer.
But I got on social media today because I did my video.
Mm.
Thank
And
you, by the way.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome. Um, I I could not like the disinformation. No. And what the hell's the difference between misinformation and disinformation? It's just
Not
plain lies, like the full-on lies that
Mhm.
are out there. Like for example, I get online today and Kevin Kiley has a new post. And I'm saying his name. He's our congressman.
Yeah.
And he's calling out Governor Newsom, who I have my issues with through this whole entire thing to begin with, but we'll go there later, maybe. And uh, Mayor Bass over the fact that the Trump administration wouldn't have had to send any of these people in if the mayor and the governor were not instigating these rioters. And I thought, you're sitting congressman and you're okay with the federal government coming onto your territory. Now, they haven't come into your district yet, so maybe that isn't the problem. But what if they did? What would happen then? And so now you've got all of these people, you've got a sitting legislator or sitting congressman saying these things. And he's not the only one, I'm positive, for sure. He's not the only one saying this. And now you've got other people aping it, essentially saying, well, if they weren't instigating people, we wouldn't have had to send in the National Guard. Well, guess what? When was the last time we sent in the National Guard to any state? Was what? Like, did I read that somewhere like 1965 or something like that? I don't I mean, I feel like people would say it was for COVID and George Floyd, but I don't know if that's
I
100%
honestly
true.
don't know off the top
Yeah,
of my
I
head.
don't know
well.
either. But
I think the situation I mentioned 1960 something with what happened with the desegregation of schools.
Mhm.
That the reason why I highlighted that is because it was the president sending in the National Guard of that
Mhm.
state, similar to what Trump is doing now. The National Guard has been called for different things,
Yeah.
natural disasters,
Yeah.
other probably riots and other things that were going on in the state. But in terms of the president overtaking the state guard of that area, the last time it happened was with the desegregation of schools, and Governor Wallace in Alabama and standing in the way. They used that then, but that was the last time up
Yeah.
until yesterday.
Yeah. So
I'm just unclear. Like, are we, for folks who support states' rights, are you comfortable with the federal government overriding your state's position? If the governor and all of the people in positions of power and their citizens and the sheriff and the people who represent that area are saying, nah, we're good. Are you comfortable with the federal government overriding that and saying, nah, you don't know what's best for you. Let me come in and take care of this.
Yeah.
I
And
think
so
we
quick.
have a big problem with that. I have a big problem with that.
Mhm.
We didn't ask for this help.
And also the description of these things. They're saying they're riots and looting. And that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're recording ICE. They're, of course, getting in the way and doing these things to stop some of these raids, but they're not looting or rioting. They're trying to
And
find ways to stop their families and their communities from being taken.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Some of them.
They're dragging trash cans in front of the cars. I've seen that video. But like my thought is, let's suppose that they are looting, that a handful of people are bad actors. You're always going
Right.
to get people who
Yeah.
can't moderate their emotions and they escalate to the point that's like dangerous or troublesome. That is normal in any situation. There have been football crowds that have gotten too amped up, and a handful of folks took it too far. We don't call in like the National Guard to manage those people. The police just come in heavy on those people. They arrest them, they do what they have to do. It's not ideal, but it happens. You don't want to have like a reaction that matches the smallest little contingent of really wild folks.
Yeah.
That's wild. That makes everybody on edge because it doesn't match. The energies don't match, to use a popular term now. Like the energies just don't match. Most everybody's peaceful. Most of the videos you see are people holding flags, chanting. Those are most folks that you see. And sort of have
Understandably
that.
angry.
What's that?
Understandably angry.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally. But I just think that it's ridiculous. Even if there is a handful of people who are getting a little crazy, sure, but you don't need the National Guard. Those are highly trained military people. You don't need that.
And even with immigration, when they came in, you'll see videos. They were already coming in with these armored vehicles covered in faces and tactical gear from the start, like from the beginning, even prior to anybody throwing a rock or doing anything violent. They're coming in with that energy. And I think that's what they wanted, in my opinion. It's human nature. And they're pretending like, oh my God, look at this shock. Oh my God, look at the reaction. Like, look at what you're doing. If you weren't there, this wouldn't be happening. If you would go about
Yeah.
this a different way, maybe with I don't know what way, but not as they're coming at it like they are now, maybe this wouldn't be happening.
Well,
There's going to be protests. There's going to be people angry. Protest is nothing new, but they're standing there and are watching you rip people apart, take people in, there's going to be people that want to get in the way. It's human nature. This is their community. This is where they live. Maybe they know that person. Maybe that's their loved one. And as I've mentioned, and as has been mentioned, is some of these people are citizens. Some of these people have documentation, and they're still being taken just for being there, for being brown, and that's not right.
And why this way?
yeah,
There's
why?
no other way to do this.
Right. With the masks over your faces? What is that?
Well,
I'll
and
tell you what, if anybody rolled up without any identification and a mask over their face and tried to scoop up somebody, for sure I'm throwing myself on them. For sure. Like
yeah.
it looks to me like you're being kidnapped. That's what it looks to
Right.
me like. You have no identification and no official, like I am this person from this agency. I think someone's kidnapping you.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for all intents and purposes, that is what's happening.
Right.
So I just don't understand that. Like, why have you chosen this mode of getting to people? And okay, so maybe I'm opening a can of worms when I say this. And I think I asked this question in our chat yesterday. Like, if the objective is to get violent criminals, and I realize we're a sanctuary state, right? Like, so we're not supposed to, like, our law enforcement only like cooperates with ICE in certain ways. But if these people are legitimately, like, if there's legitimate criminals out there, I feel like there's another way to get at them
Mhm.
than raiding a workplace, because those are folks, you know what they're doing? They're going to work. That's what they're doing. They're going to work. There's no other way to do it than raiding a graduation, because guess what? They're watching their kid graduate.
Their kids are in school, getting educated.
Yeah. Or there's no reason to be okay with law enforcement coming onto a school trying to do a welfare check on children that are not under their care. Why isn't CPS doing that? Why isn't somebody else doing that? And frankly, why would anybody fall for that shit? So I just don't understand why they've chosen this mode other than just the pure cruelty of it, or because this is a promise that was made during a campaign, and it riled so many people up, and it unleashed so much hate and anger that if he doesn't do it, then how do you maintain that hate and anger? Like, what do you do? I don't know. Also, who has the prison contracts?
Right. It's definitely, of course, you got to follow the money.
Sure.
There have been more prison contracts given out. the people that donated to the Trump administration's Trump's campaign were people from those industries that would benefit from him coming into office. But for me, what I think they're trying to do is they're coming at the communities with the highest level of immigrants, and they're it's like going up to the biggest, I don't call us bullies, but the biggest kid in the school and punching him in the face to set the tone to try
Mhm.
to for all these other communities. I feel like Los Angeles represents like the largest undocumented community, Latino community, and what way to try to instill fear and also to try to get that footage of people fighting back and using that, then to go to the biggest areas to do that, to instigate, to create fear, to make people feel like there's nothing else they can do. If people in LA are being taken, then who's to say that Auburn and other communities
Yeah.
that couldn't happen in some of these communities where some of this stuff happens silently. um, and that's how what I think it's very psychological and it's very targeted to the largest community so that you start there.
It's
So how
also
has
very basic, man. Like
Yeah, right.
if you mean to like if you are governing by fear, that's so basic. I mean,
it
it
really
just
is?
shows a real lack of vision, a real lack of like how do you invite people along to share in the vision that you have? Like to govern by fear is just so basic.
And
It's so
cowardly.
basic.
It is. It is. Now, like, since we're kind of talking about how they're doing it, and how what should be the way that could be something that maybe we discuss of a solution or maybe a better process. Of course, I know from previous conversations that we have different ideas of how things should work, how immigration should happen. And I love that. I love that we have kind of a little bit different ways. Obviously, we're all uh, in agreement that it should be in a humane and positive way instead of a fearful and damaging way to families and communities. But I think, I guess my question to you two, and we'll see how this goes, but what would be a better way? What would be a way that maybe this could be done? Or should this be even be happening? I don't want to say like this should be happening, but there should be a better way. And if you guys haven't given too much thought
When
into
you
that,
when you say okay, when you say better way for what? Like just immigration
Immigration?
in general,
yeah, I guess
or
immigration.
I go back to how do you do something? So you can sit there and say, I'd like to this, I'd like to that. Okay, well, how is it that that gets done? Talking to Tomas over the year, all these little ways in which you have to do this and you have to do that, blah, 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 blows my mind. Like the administrative portion of this, that, once you learn how to do something or how something is done, like I feel like that's really, those are the folks that can really kind of put a real significant bent on actually helping the situation.
So what you're saying is you just can't go apply or get in line
What do you
to
mean?
like you're saying like there you mentioned about there's different ways or how I mentioned that there's all different not applications but different requirements and all these other things. So what I'm trying to point out is that so what you're saying is there's not just a simple way of getting in line or filling out this application to
That there
immigrate to
isn't
this
now.
country. Yeah,
That there isn't now. It doesn't sound like it
there
from
isn't.
what I've heard. Yeah, that's exactly. Doesn't sound like that at all. So, I mean, some of the stories that I've heard from folks, which I will not, I mean, that's their personal information, but I'll just speak in generalities. They will never, ever have citizenship because there is no viable path for them at all. Financially, like even just like administratively, there is no viable path for them to become citizens. And
Well, yeah,
I mean, if
that's
it
true.
is insofar as, well, yes. So there's no viable path. We need to understand the mechanisms that create those ways in which people can't because I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense. So if we find out the ways in which people can't access, um, a way for citizenship, and figure out why those exist to begin with. So it sounds to me like, how do I do this, for example, like with asylum, right? Like you can't work, right? If I understand that correctly, like if you're
There's a
seeking
period
asylum,
where you can't work. So yeah, it
see,
doesn't make sense.
doesn't make any sense to me. That is the most illogical thing in the world to me, because then I'm imagining, and I'm not 100% certain if this is true, but there's probably another requirement for some other thing that says, well, if you didn't work, then we can't do this for you, or something like you need to have some sort of work history in order for us to, and then now with, you can't apply for Medicaid, you can't apply for any assistance, so you definitely have better had a, a support system like family or something like that, or
Be
you're
clear,
just
it's not
working
like
illegally.
Medicaid hands out large sums of money. I know that's a huge myth that so many people believe. When you apply for cash assistance, it's ridiculously low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get like no money. So I need people to understand that no one's getting like $1,800 a month to sit around at their house. That's not happening for
Yeah.
anyone in this
Yeah.
country. Doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter.
So
That's
the
not happening.
only so I do want to push back on that because I do know, and I don't have full information. The only group that does receive anything are refugees, but
Okay.
I'm even unsure of that amount and how much it is. But refugees is definitely a different category. But
Yeah.
asylum seekers, yes, they don't receive what if you've heard of like a $300 like gift card, possibly. You know what I'm saying? Like possibly. Here's you're seeking asylum, you're here alone. There might be some form of very temporary assistance. But other than that, really, like there's no way to be able to apply for any assistance. And if
Yeah.
you
So I'm
do try to apply and try to do it in a certain way, you're violating laws. And many of those people are dealt with that do, but it's been known that you do not apply for any assistance coming from the undocumented community. You just don't.
yeah. So then at that point, you've now come to the United States, you're seeking asylum, you can't work for a period of time. What do you do?
They still
You
work.
don't.
You
Well,
have
yeah,
You
but
can't.
that's my point. Yeah, you
Right.
do. I mean, you have
Yeah.
to, but like, I mean,
It forces you to work under the table without
yeah,
Mhm.
paying taxes, probably, which isn't good for anyone. It's just dumb.
yeah.
Well, I will say that I think that's on purpose. And I will mention, I don't know his full title, but I think Millard Fillmore is the name of the guy. Oh no, that's the president. there's 13th president of the United States. I was just looking it up, but there's I will share the name and maybe we'll put it down here in the title, or not title, but
In
an
the caption, in the notes, the show notes.
there's somebody and there's a video out there from him in like it might have been the 80s 70s, but he said that the only way that the United States can benefit from immigration is you keep everybody undocumented, that you keep people undocumented because then you're not forced to pay them wages, benefits, and all these things. And this was, I don't want to call it a theory, but like an idea. Um,
Well,
and I'm forgetting his name. It's gonna come up later. There's the video that I shared, and it's an economic. I think he's an economic. What's that? I forget that. I'm forgetting the term, but he is somebody that is known, and he put this out that the only way you benefit from immigrants is that you keep them undocumented for as long as you can, because as soon as somebody becomes documented, then they could apply to for assistance, do are able to get certain benefits, and so that is a cost on the country.
So I wonder if that coincides, because you and I have talked about this too, about the Bracero program, because my dad brings it up. Like he's like,
Yeah,
that, I mean,
yeah.
they should bring that back. And people have their opinions about that, but I'm wondering how that theory coincided with the
Well,
that
First,
not being a
the
thing. I don't
the
know.
people that participate in the Bracero program, from what I understand, also had very limited ways to go from that program to legal status. Some did, of course, you get married. There's other forms there are other very limited ways that you could become a citizen of this country. But just to kind of give people some background information what that program is. In the 19 when World War II started, many men, of course, were out fighting, and there was a limited workforce. Well, the United States had the idea of bringing in the workforce from Mexico, so they created this program called the Bracero program, and it allowed mainly men, and I'm not sure if women were a part of it, but they would come into the country and work in these jobs that were needed during World War II. And that lasted up to 1964. When I looked up the program when it ended, 1964 was the last time that that program was available. And then it was just disbanded. And I'm pretty sure there's probably some deportations coming from the end of that program. And people that stayed or people that were able to readjust status and be here from that program. But that is what your dad is talking about.
Yeah. So his thought is, we need to bring something like that back, like more work programs.
I
Um,
agree.
and I
That
okay,
is a solution. That because from what I said, and if you've ever heard me speak, I've always said that the United States benefits from immigrants, not in the way that that guy was also saying, but there are a certain amount of people that just want to come here and work and then go back
yeah,
to the country and be here for like a year and then go back like that. Once that revolving door was closed in like the early 90s, after the Reagan administration and amnesty,
mhm,
when the border started becoming more militarized, when it was harder for people to come going back and forth, that is what created the the cost of coming to this country, because then people couldn't come into the United States, work 6 months, undocumented, of course, go back to their country, because now like the cost of coming rose from just a few $100s to now where it's like I've heard 15K, 20K. So now if you come here for a year, work and save up and go back, like there's no way. So then you're forced to stay here for two
oh my
years, for
God,
5 years, for a much longer time while your family is growing up in Mexico. And nobody wants that. Like they want to see their family. And for some that don't bring their family over, that is what happens. That the dad stays in the United States alone and their kids grow up and they're paying for their school, but they grow up without a dad.
yeah,
And that's what happens. But now there's people that they're like, I want my family here because that is who I want to be with. But there's no mechanism there to be able to do that. So I guess a one way would be to create a workers program where people can um if they're good, then they could then readjust and potentially bring their families here. We do want people immigrating to this country because that's just been the history of it, and that is how you create a more diverse
yeah.
community, which I believe diversity isn't what some of these people against immigration want.
Well, I mean, y'all already know, like I'm probably, I'm pretty, I'm pretty much like, you know what? When we originally colonized this country,
Yeah.
um, people came over from all over and just parked it here. And that, it was
Yep.
brutal and rough in many ways, and a lot of stuff happened. But I think a lot of people got to come here and establish, like, I was not, my relatives and the people in my family line were not born in this country. So, I mean, to what extent do we call folks immigrants? I mean, I think a good majority of us were not native to these lands. And, depending on how far back you want to go, I mean, people had to migrate from all over. It's just, I think it's a strange fixation on a construct that we make up. I know I've
Mhm.
said this before, but like, I don't know why we have to be so intense about it. people want to move here. Great. They want to work here, raise their kids here, live a happy, like successful life. I love that. Please do. Like come here. Maybe I want to go live somewhere else for a while. I hope that I would get to do that. I hope people don't make it hard on me. Like, I don't know why this has to be the way that it is. People are so terrified that we're going to run out of resources, or that you're going to get X'd out of getting some resource or some access or opportunity. And that's not true. It's just not true. It's how people fearmonger to you. It's how people make you get really protective of what you have by threatening to say that you won't have it if someone else is around. And that's just not true. I just personally believe that we make these things incredibly hard and difficult for greedy and selfish reasons, nothing else.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't have to be this hard. I don't think that we should. I don't know, like I just feel like if you want to come here, great. And maybe I want to go live somewhere else too, and that's also great. Like I have a very different perspective on it than a lot of people do. Um, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I just think that it's bizarre. It's bizarre.
It
So
is
how?
very, very
Yeah.
bizarre. And I do want to add one thing, because I do want to acknowledge how this is being used, and also acknowledge people's pain, financially, economically, over the last 20 years. Because I think if we don't, they're like, they may fall into this easier, but they're having people that have been struggling, whether that's themselves not being able to work, or maybe they just haven't been able to find work or not work hard enough. Maybe that is also one of the things or they're seeing other people be successful, and they're seeing all these other things, and you see this immigrant that just got here, and now he has a new truck, and maybe in the next decade he got a new home. How is he doing that? And I do, yeah,
Hustling.
yeah,
Yeah, he's
He's
hustle.
out here
working
grinding.
hard.
You know what I mean? Like that's
but
what he's
but
doing.
they
Too
don't
much.
want to they don't want to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that that person is outworking them. The person that barely can speak English, that has no degree, that just got here the last decade. They don't want to acknowledge that their own, I don't know what to call it, but their own failings of being successful. And so they see this person, and then they hear this message that they're getting things for free, that everything's being handed to them. And it's a much easier message, or it's much easier to believe that than to acknowledge that you just haven't been successful, that maybe your family set you up for to not be successful. Whatever the reason is, it's not that person's fault. When we first come here, we all live in like little apartment, like maybe like 10 people. We're sleeping, in a room. And yes, we are probably just paying one rent, and though we're able to save up more, and we're able to do these things. We live in a very limited ways. We're not taking vacations. We're working 7 days a week. We barely see our parents growing up because they're working all the time. And that is how we do it. But we're not getting things for free. We are struggling, and just as much as you are. And yes, I will admit that we do have these large parties and these large celebrations for quinceañera and other things. Other people do that, but we like to celebrate milestones. And I'm not saying that just to excuse those type of events, but maybe that's what they're seeing. They're like, wow, that was all our money. We literally just spent like our savings on this quinceañera, and now we're broke for the next year. That's what ends up happening.
That is no one else's business. Like
True.
they, I mean, like, I feel like people, like, if everybody, for the folks who don't want like the government or other people in your business, keep your nose out of people's business,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, if people are living whatever kind of, like, it's not your business. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what people's lives are like. You don't know how people come by whatever they come by. Like you said, maybe they went without for a long time so they could splurge. We don't know. And it's not our business.
Very true. I just also just want to mention. I just wanted to mention that because I think that is what's being used. Is this issue is being used to tell you, like, look, the reason why you're not successful is because of the immigrant next door, the people there, and and that is what they're using it for, in my opinion. But that is what Trump is using it and how they're using it, so that then they can get people thinking that, oh, if you just get rid of them, I'm going to be successful and be able to get these things that they're getting, when we're not getting any of that. I mean,
No.
even if the people that do get any assistance, it's what other citizens have been getting. Like, it's no different. And it's not like it's extra. So
Right. There's no Medicaid for immigrants and then Medicaid for citizens. It's all the
Yeah.
same stuff. Like whatever benefits are available is what's available to all people who are here.
exactly.
If you are eligible, some programs, obviously, we know immigrants aren't even eligible for. So,
Or have very limited
And I give my
eligibility. Yeah.
grandparents situation because my grandma's retired. My grandfather still works a little bit, but they are not going to receive Social Security. They have no retirement. Where their retirement? Like, they worked 30 years paying into Social Security, into the system, which this is very common. They know this is going to happen. They've they've wished that something could change, because there is still that amount of money that's connected to their name. Um, but they know that they're not going to get that money that was taken out of their paycheck. And that is the reality for many of them. For many of our older immigrants, undocumented immigrants, they know that they won't be getting their Social Security. So
that's so insane. Like I think about that for, how they're talking about cutting Social Security or extending it for people.
yep.
It's just like people work so hard. All people, right? If you work,
Hmm.
you know, like it's hard and it's a lot of sacrifice. And a lot of times you work at jobs that you don't like, that don't bring you enough anyway. And you have to pay part of that to the government. And there's reasons that you do. And it's,
Right.
to pay for the folks who are older now, to help pay for roads, to help pay for infrastructure. There are reasons. And I actually am somebody who supports all of that. I think that's great. Like, I'm happy to take care of my elderly neighbors through my working and paying into the system. I'm happy to do that.
Yep.
I just think that it's crazy that you could work all that time and then we'll look at you and be like, not for you.
We're going
Not
to take it and
They're
give
going
it.
to take your money,
Yeah.
but then when it's time for you to receive the benefit and the support to help, for all your as a and it's not a like this is Social Security, you paid for it. It's not
Yeah.
a free benefit that like we're just gifting out money. That is people's money that they paid in. It's basically a long-term savings account, and it's crazy that we could withhold that from people.
And it, IRS knows this too,
Yeah.
and that's why they created the I-10. I want to say it's 94, 95 in the 90s, the I-10 number, because you file taxes under an I-10. For people wondering how do people file taxes, everyone has an I-10, and if you have a small business, if you're working under a different Social Security number, which many people do, um, they file their taxes under that I-10. But IRS knows. I've asked somebody from the IRS that came and presented when I was at the Latino Leadership Council in 2016, what happens to that money? Like, they're like, oh, it sits in a separate pot. It's used, but it's separated from the people that are citizens and that are paying in Social Security. They're aware. This is why actually Trump wants to go after the IRS, because you kind of know who is undocumented through that, which maybe we'll cut that part out, but we'll see.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's so
So, um, they're, but they'll take the money. And I asked them, I said, will you wait? So they're like, yes, we take the money. Okay, what if someone tries to apply for benefits? That's when a red flag comes up and that person's prosecuted, when they try to use a benefit that they legally can't use. That is when they're flagged, and there might be some charges against that person for trying to use that. But they're fine taking the money. They're like, keep that money coming, and yeah. I know. I'm sorry. Back here.
Oh,
Let
yeah,
me.
it's like, oh, I mean, because truth be told, to me, these are all violations against people, like in on different levels, right? Like these are you're exploiting people who are incredibly vulnerable. I mean, it's just an exploitation of vulnerable people. Let's just leave it at that. You're exploiting vulnerable people, and nothing pisses me off more than that. Like, I don't know what else would piss you off more than that, than exploitation of vulnerable people. So,
Meanwhile, they're using a sledgehammer where they need tweezers in terms
Right.
of, these raids, right? You're looking for a specific group of people. And so let's just wholesale disrupt everybody's lives so that we can do this.
and terrify the populace while we do it, because I think it's scary that people can just like mobilize the military against us. Like, surely not all those people that are protesting are people who are undocumented. A
No.
lot
No.
of those folks are citizens,
The
and that's
majority.
terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah. There's very likely, unlikely that there's even a permanent resident among those people because
sure.
they
They're
know if
scared. Yeah.
they've seen, and we've seen what can be done when you go after people when there's recordings. Of course, January 6th, after that riot happened on the Capitol, they
Mhm.
were able to piece together who was there through facial recognition and then go after those people. So even if you're just in the area, you can't be charged with something just being a part of it. So I can almost guarantee that there's not even somebody that's an immigrant in those. Maybe someone wearing a green hat and recording, but it's very unlikely.
Which just that adds to it because that means people who care, that means
Yeah.
people who are supportive, are out there, putting themselves out there, getting arrested, you know,
Yeah.
getting tear gassed, all of that potentially now shot with paper bullets or whatever's coming out of that Black Hawk helicopter that was holding all. Oh, you guys didn't see that? You see
No.
that?
I've seen somebody shot with paper bullets,
No, no, no. There's the
rubber
Black
bullets.
Hawk.
Rubber.
Oh,
There's a Black Hawk. There was a video of them transporting like ammunition. I think it was, the like the paper bullets or whatever it was out of this Black Hawk helicopter.
Is it paper or rubber?
rubber.
No,
I said paper on accident.
no, but I think I read
Oh,
paper.
okay.
Yeah, that's why
I
I
don't know
said it
anything
because
about
usually
paper
you say
bullets.
rubber, and I was like, read it and I was like, paper. That seems okay. Well, I don't know about that. In
Yeah.
any event, they're all getting shot. They're getting some sort of violence perpetrated upon them. Um, and because I don't know.
You just
It's
made me realize something maybe I
yeah,
already knew, but this is a situation where we can't control our own destiny. We cannot vote. We cannot do anything to fix this. It's up to the citizens of
yeah.
this country to stand up to what's going on in
Mhm.
these raids, to go out and vote a certain way. We can't do it. We can't donate. If you're undocumented, you cannot do anything. You are just left to the will of what people want. And from the last election, whether people thought that this was going to happen or not, this is what was voted for. Um, that doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make it right. But we're in a situation where we can't do anything. We just need to survive.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Well, I mean, a lot of these situations in which, like women's rights, immigration reform, all of those, there are not fights that the people within them could really finish. They can start them, they
Mm-hmm.
could make noise, they can say, please help us. And in the ways in which they do it are different. Women can be a little bit more vocal about it, but maybe at some point in time in history they couldn't. There's always some um, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like quiet protest leading up to it. But there will always be a point in which you can't finish the fight. Somebody has to finish it for you because it's a decision, a cultural, whatever sort of decision that has to be made, because you're the one asking for it. And
Yeah.
it's just, it sucks. Because we shouldn't be here. Like, I just feel like everything just went backwards very quickly. And I don't know. Anyways, it sounds like, though,
I
there's a
will
lot of
say,
people willing to put themselves on the line, though, for this right now.
right. I will say this. This is hopefully it does give people some hope. But now that we've seen what this type of administration or this type of, and I'm sure we're going to see more. I hope that if there is another election, that people do not fall for the same lies when someone tells you they're going to do something, they're going to do it. And they probably aren't the best source of of the what the opponent is going to do, and because they may lie, they don't want you to think that their opponent is trying to help or will help you. But also, of course, I don't want to just put it on them, and I think we do need to have better candidates, a better opposition, better party that can put forward a better message that could reach that demographic that voted for Trump last time around. I think we need to also acknowledge those things. It's not just that um, that people wanted Trump, is that people wanted something different that might have not been the Democrats.
Yep.
So we do need to acknowledge that. And also, there's a whole mess of things, and we can talk about that probably for a very long time. But I just wanted to say that there will be another election. I think that people are seeing what's going on, and maybe that they may be people that may not be out there or maybe even share some things, but they're watching as well. And there's always that pendulum swing that happens, with Barack Obama, with Biden, with Trump, like it's always swinging. So my guess and my hope is that it swings the other way, and that we do have a way to get out of this, and that we have an opportunity to pass a meaningful legislation that will fix or make sure that these things don't happen again.
What do we want to leave our audience with as takeaways for opportunities to be their own hero? So it sounds like we're definitely encouraging people to really consider this next election cycle and how you can have impact on that, what you can do to help ensure that the values that you hold, the things that you believe in, become front and center, a topic of conversation, and that your perspective gets heard. What else do you guys think that we could offer people to do right now to be their own hero?
I think that sometimes being your own hero means stepping up for somebody else.
Yeah.
In this particular instance,
Be the person you wish you wish you had if you needed them. You know what I mean? Like if you
exactly.
were in
Yeah.
trouble, be the person you wish would stand up for you.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I like that.
If anybody has any questions or anything, any ideas, or just wants to get involved, I mean, they could always reach out to me. You always reach out to one of us. That doesn't have to be being a part of the Democratic Party. There's different things that you can do. Sometimes it just starts by helping your own community, by volunteering, by starting. It starts somewhere, and nobody's going to be an expert. Nobody's going to be good at strategizing or getting others to do things. But if you just start and try, I think you'll find that you can make a huge difference. And also, it's so good seeing many people out there. And I never fault people for not being involved from the beginning. I always tell you, you're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
All right. I think that's it, huh? Anybody else got anything to offer? That's heavy.
I know that was intense, you guys. I mean, probably still gonna leave here and be pissed off. Rar.
Sorry. I just have to laugh.
Yeah. Rar. That's like my dejected. I'm still angry and also dejected because it feels, yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know, it feels heavy.
it is.
Well, thank you for sharing,
Yeah,
Tomas.
What?
for real, Tomas. Thank you for sharing so much of your personal experience. I think it's so important for people to hear that. I really do.
And I mean, is there anything like we can
What
do
you're
to help?
doing,
Okay.
doing this is getting this out, creating those videos. I think if something does happen locally, that changes things. What I mean happens is something that we have chances to react because many things happen and then like they happen and we find about it like later the day or the next day. But if there's anything to the level of like LA in this area, I hope others will step up and do something or at least be there, bear witness, record, do the things, not get violent, but just be there. So.
There are some places people can go to learn.
The only place that I know and that I trust is NorCal Resist and what they do with their Migra Watch, and they do have trainings. You may not agree with their bigger beliefs or their views, but in terms of immigration, they do have good trainings where you can know your rights, but also potentially volunteer as somebody that if there is an ICE raid and the community where they can just go and record. That's all they do. Go and record. If they can contact a family member, they'll do that. There's also people that will attend court with some immigrants as well. Now, you cannot get involved, of course, if someone gets picked up at court. But again, going with somebody, recording, making sure that they're reminded of their rights, that is super important because once people are being taken, you just forget everything. And so by having somebody there, having I think it's called a companion or accompanying, but they do stuff, they do things like that. So Norca Resist, and then there's other groups in Sacramento, but Norca Resist does do things in Placer County. So
All right. Well,
donate to
thank
them too
you.
if you can, by the way.
Yeah, donate.
Yeah, they're a nonprofit, so they do. Then they and I would say that I see them in the community doing other things aside from immigration, but just helping people. So that's very important.
Well, we'll put the link in the
Yeah, definitely.
The show
notes.
notes.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yes. Thanks, you
And
guys.
everybody, you know what? Go out there and be your own hero, but also just let's be our own heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go out and be your own damn hero. I didn't end that very well.
I like it. And
I
be
like
someone
it.
else's damn hero.
What?
And be someone else's damn hero.
There it is. There it
There we
is.
go.